Welcome to Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode 102. Hi, I'm Chris. Welcome to our podcast.
And I'm Jill. Chris and I are your co-hosts today and the women running the Becoming Ellie community.
If you're new to the podcast, welcome. And I know you're wondering why our community is called Becoming Ellie. Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who wrestled Thor and beat him.
Chris and I thought, hey, we want to be like Ellie, fit and strong as we get older.
You can find out more about us at our website, becomingellie.com, and Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I.
And while you're there, you can sign up for our newsletter. That way you'll hear about new podcast episodes and whatever else is new in the Becoming Ellie community.
I'm really excited about today's episode. Amanda Boswell helped me a lot a few years ago when I was training for a new type of race and also when I was dealing with an injury.
She has lots of great information about swimming to share with us. Let's go to the podcast.
Amanda Boswell is a lifelong swimmer and coach who helps people learn to love the water and gain confidence in their swimming ability. She works with people of all ages and different levels of swimming experience. Her clients have goals ranging from learning how to swim to training for triathlons.
Amanda competed in swimming through high school, but an injury kept her from moving on to college competition. During college, began coaching instead and found that she loved being involved in the sport from a different perspective.
Amanda holds a bachelor's degree in exercise science from Miami University and a master's degree in sport and exercise psychology from Capella University. She is also a certified personal trainer with the American College of Sports Medicine.
Here's a quote from Amanda. One of the best things about coaching swimmers is when they have that aha moment and everything clicks from their repeated hard work and determination, either with breathing or just being more efficient with their strokes. Training for a swimming event can be intimidating, but with the right coaching and workouts, you can absolutely train to be your best in the water.
Welcome, Amanda. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk with you both.
You probably don't remember, but I first got to know you many years ago when you helped me with an injury by using the resistance river in the pool at our gym. It made a huge difference to my training. And I'm really excited to talk with you today because there's a lot of women who are listening to our podcast and are interested in improving their swimming. Can you describe how you might determine someone's swimming competency?
Actually, I do remember that very well because I remember it kind of pushed me a little bit to think of some new ways to do things. I think you were training for like a canoeing race or something at some point, or kayaking. So I had to get a little creative from normal, and we used noodles and we were like building upper body in the water, and it was a lot different, but it was a lot of fun. It was way different than just teaching people how to swim.
It was a triathlon where you ran, you biked, and you kayaked. I forgot which one it was. I couldn't think of that. That's funny.
Oh, I remember. That one was definitely unique, and it pushed my boundaries a little bit, but it was fun.
That's our Chris.
So just in looking at competencies for swimming, I usually just have a meeting one-on-one with whoever's looking to get better with their swimming. And I kind of evaluate their strokes. Typically, I'll talk to them over the phone or through like instant messenger or something and just kind of see where they're at, if they've ever done any swimming before. And if not, then I kind of know where we're starting. If they have and they say, I'm comfortable in the water, but this is what I'm shooting for. I want to do a triathlon, or I want to do a master's swim meet. You know, there's all kinds of different goals. And I've worked with everybody. I had a lady who was completely terrified of the water. And our first lesson was walking in the water together. And I've also worked with adults who are looking to do a triathlon and just get better with their stroke. So just kind of a lot of open communication. And then that first meeting, I really just look at their stroke. If they are a little more comfortable in the water, I'll have them swim a length and say like, here, let's tweak this and just kind of build from there.
So when I was a kid, I took lots of swimming lessons, and I would have said, I figured I know how to swim. But I hadn't swum in many years. And then my son was taking lessons, and we went somewhere and we got in the pool together, and I could not remember how to breathe. He had to show me. He was like, do this. So I started swimming again a little bit. And then, I swam like that day a little bit, but then later we were talking. I got in the pool thinking, well, this would be good exercise. And I was in pretty good shape because I had been running, and I swam one length of that pool and I thought I was going to die. I stopped. I was out of breath. My heart was pounding. It was a humbling moment in my fitness life, I have to say.
I hear that all the time from people. That scenario.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for us, people who, think we could swim or could swim, but maybe not very well anymore?
Swimming is a whole different beast. When I was in high school, people would cross train with cross country and track in the off season. And then they'd get to the pool and they're like, I'm in such good shape, but I'm out of swimming shape. And when you're swimming, you use every single muscle in your body, like muscles you didn't even know that you had way deep down in there, you're using them and you'll feel them a couple of days later. So some of the best athletes like on land in running might not be in swimming shape when they get into the pool. Breathing is huge. It's a huge component to it. Once you get your breathing down, it's a little bit easier, but just like with anything, you have to kind of work at it consistently. And then each session in the pool is going to be a little bit easier than the one before.
Okay. So it's like people who say, I've never run, but I'm going to go run a marathon. My saying, oh yeah, I could go do whatever.
Yeah, that's not realistic that you're going to run a marathon tomorrow unless you've been training. Swimming is the exact same way.
Okay. And maybe even more so.
Yeah, I think more so because you have that whole element of breathing, not air, but, breathing in the water and get your face out of it. And I know we've talked with some women recently on our podcast that are just learning to swim as an adult. And I think you've probably worked with adults who have had issues when they were younger and maybe have some fear of the deep end, but yet they want to learn and be competent again in swimming. So maybe you could share some ideas with our listeners about how you help people overcome their fears.
Yes, I've definitely seen all aspects of fear and zero fear with the water. Adults are a little different. I've coached several kids programs and on several high school teams. They usually start from age 5. They have zero fear of the water. Right. Adults are different in that they develop a fear potentially, or something has happened in their life where they're scared of the water and they feel out of control. And that's what you do have to get over with them. So just a lot of patience. If I'm working with somebody, like I mentioned, somebody that was terrified of the water, we just walked in the water where she could stand the whole time for the whole first lesson. And then progressively we worked on, like, I would hold her in a float, and then she was starting to do things on her own. After a couple of weeks, she was like floating on her own with the noodle without me holding her hand. So just kind of finding your comfort level, but pushing it a little bit while staying safe. If you're scared of the deep end, grabbing a noodle and putting that like under your arms and under your waist, so you are floating and then maybe holding onto the lane line or holding onto the wall until you're comfortable, then let that hand go, but keep the noodles. Then maybe let one noodle go and like see if you can just kick. And then eventually maybe let both noodles go, but hold onto the wall again. There's really no reason to rush it, because if you do have that underlying fear, you don't want to stay away from the water entirely. You don't want to make yourself scared further. So just taking like little steps rather than just jumping in the deep end and seeing how it goes. Definitely just take those small baby steps with the water.
That's good to hear, because I know some people think they have to rip off the Band-Aid, do it all at once, go cold turkey kind of thing. And it's just beyond it's just too much. Yes. So baby steps of going in with a support of some sort, like whether the wall or the noodles, and bit by bit. And then how long, like, I guess as long as it takes, right? You don't have to.
Right. I mean, swimming is just like anything else. It's just, you have to keep with it. If you go in the pool 1 week and then you stay away for 6 weeks, you're going to be right back at that first session if you're not practicing. So if you're going every day doing a little bit more each day, it's not going to take you as long. If you can only make it to a pool once a week, then it's maybe going to take a little bit longer. And then it's just more how comfortable you are with pushing your limits too. If you're in the deep end and you think like, okay, this isn't as bad as I expected, then maybe you're more comfortable with pushing yourself a little further than somebody else would be.
Perhaps we should have started with this. Why should we swim? Or what are the advantages to us with swimming? And if I'm leery about the pool, or I feel like this isn't anything I've done, why should I work on this? What does swimming bring to me that maybe running doesn't, or bicycling, or any other sport?
Swimming is pretty much zero impact on your joints. So even for those that are regular runners and maybe don't have any injuries, getting in the pool, even like once a week or a couple of times a month, is just going to give those joints a rest. So you're not pounding, or you're not on the elliptical doing that same movement. And it's just different movements. But then if you're swimming laps, even if you are not training for a triathlon or a swimming race, it's just a different form of cardio. And you don't really think about it, but you are getting resistance from pulling yourself through the water. Even though it's not like lifting weights, you're getting resistance. Every time you move your arm, you have to pull your arm through the water. You don't just go magically. So your body's physically pulling you, which is why I said you're using every muscle, even those teeny tiny little ones in your shoulder and your chest, they're all working. So you are getting some resistance training there, not as much as, bench pressing, but it's still there. And it's just a different movement and training those muscles a little differently.
Okay. So you don't get the pressure on your joints.
Correct.
That you do with other cardio exercises.
Right.
And you work those other muscles that you can't reach with any other exercise, I guess.
Right.
When you think about it.
Right. And it's just a great way to get your heart rate elevated, but not feel like you're sweating. Even though you do sweat when you're in the water, you just don't realize it because you're in a pool. But some people don't really like to sweat, or like they don't like to feel that like intensity of their workout. So even though you are sweating and you're wet, it's just, some people are like, oh, well, it's better because I don't see myself sweating, or I don't feel myself sweating. So it's not a big deal. I'm like, well, you might actually be working harder than you would on land, but if that's what you like to do, then I'm all for it.
That's true. I remember being sort of surprised that, I got thirsty while I was swimming here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yep. For sure.
Because it feels like, it really does feel, there's a different feel to swimming, even though I could only swim one length and thought I was dying. But you don't have that feeling of gasping for air like when you're running. I don't know. It just has a totally different feeling to it.
Absolutely.
I know you just said you help people with different things, but how do I find a swim coach, or how do we find even just swimming lessons for adults? Like if I want to swim, what do I do?
It's maybe a little bit tricky depending on your area. A great place to start is a gym. If you belong to a gym, seeing if any of their personal trainers have backgrounds with swimming. I wouldn't necessarily say like Red Cross swim lessons. Those are going to be more for children and they're learning how to swim. However, some of those instructors might do one-on-one private swim lessons. And you might be able to reach out to those individuals at a gym or at a YMCA or like a community rec center program and say like, hey, does anybody offer private swim lessons? I'm looking to improve my swimming, or I'm looking to just learn how to swim a little better as an adult. Is there anybody that might be able to help me? And you really would want to focus on somebody that knows what they're talking about, because injuries can happen very easily in swimming, especially like shoulders. You want to make sure that somebody has their technique down so that you're not going to get hurt from doing this.
If someone says, no, we don't have any swimming instructors, but I'll help you.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
They might be able to help you with the basics, but technique wise, I would be a little bit leery. And that's where I usually recommend, I don't typically get in the water. I will if I need to, if somebody's really not getting a skill, but I typically don't get in the water. So I will like pull up a YouTube video really quick and just show them what I'm talking about. I've learned how to teach swimming on the deck, which is kind of a learned art, but through coaching, you don't ever really get in the pool with the athletes. So I've learned how to stand on the deck and like do what I'm supposed to do with my arms. So I can usually convey what I'm talking about, but sometimes that video helps. So if you are second guessing maybe what a coach said, or they say, I'm not a strong swimmer, but I can help you, you can always double check with a YouTube video. And most of the time people are going to know what they're talking about, especially if they're teaching swim lessons. If it's a personal trainer who has zero experience and has maybe never.
That's more what I was thinking.
Yeah. Then you might want to see with them if there are any swim instructors, or online swim training is starting to pick up a little bit because of the pandemic, which is pretty interesting. And I've kind of looked at that a little bit. So you would have a video, like somebody would take a video of you swimming and then send it to this coach, and then they would provide feedback. So that's a way that you could look into it too, if you don't have any physical coaches in your area.
Oh, I never thought of that. Somebody would videotape you and then send it to the coach for evaluation. That's kind of cool.
Yes.
You brought up a good point about injuries. And, that is how I first got to know you. When I was injured, you had me doing some exercises to improve my running because I had an Achilles tendon problem and I was running in the pool. Is that called aqua running or resistance running, or is it called something else?
Usually aqua jogging or aqua running are like the main terms. And you can do that. I think we worked together in the resistance pool. So you were still getting a little bit of that pressure on your Achilles just to formulate when you are running outside. But you could also go in the deep end where you have nothing under your feet, and then it's a little safer on your joints and you're pretty much weightless there. You can wear, there's like belts that you can wear. You could wear a noodle. I don't really go with anything because I'm comfortable in the water and I like that extra challenge for my core. But definitely going in the deep end is another way to do that. So if you don't really want to swim, but you want to take kind of a day off running, you could always go and do some aqua jogging, which is a really great cardio exercise too.
So you aqua jog in the deep end?
Yes.
Is that sort of like treading water?
It's similar. It's actually, you are just like you're running. So if you think about how you stand on the ground and how you run and you do your arms forward and back and your legs go forward and back, that's essentially what you do in the deep end. And it's a little tougher in the deep end because you can like lean forward and back and you want to try to keep everything straight when you're doing it. But yeah, you just stand up as tall as you can, pump your arms. You kind of have to like swim a little bit with your arms, but then your legs are like they're running and you can just stay in one spot. You can go back and forth. You could make a circle, just kind of whatever you're feeling that day.
And that's why some people might use a belt.
Yes.
Or the noodle.
I would recommend a belt. I wouldn't do what I do unless you're very comfortable in the water. A belt is a great way to just keep you floating and make sure that, if you do need to take a break, you can just kind of stop for a second and you're still going to be floating there.
Okay. And if you don't have a deep end, or like what Chris was saying, you could just go actually run in the water, like with your feet on the bottom of the pool.
Yes. And they do. I've not seen one around here, but I know they have treadmills that are underwater. So like from waist down, you'll be underwater. And the reason they do that is because it does provide some cushioning to your joints, but you're also getting that little bit of resistance. So if you're walking in the shallow end or aqua jogging in the shallow end, it's the same concept. You're going to get some resistance from your feet hitting the bottom of the pool, but it's not as bad on your joints than if you're just running on cement or pavement or a track or something. It's just kind of that in-between step.
Okay.
That's great.
That sounds like a good exercise.
Yeah.
It is. It's tough, but it's a really good one. Sometimes when I don't feel like running, like I'm just going to go in the pool and I'm just going to aqua jog, and not to be like discredited. It's a great exercise. It's just, I'm a pool person. And so it's hard for me to run outside. I'm like a fish out of water. So sometimes like, I just don't want to run. I would rather just run in the pool, and I'll stay in there for sometimes like an hour and a half. And it's like, for me, it's nothing and it's relaxing.
Wow. That's a great idea too. When it's all icy out here, instead of worrying about trying to not slip and fall on the ice running,
Absolutely.
It's different than the treadmill too. Very, very different. Yeah.
And it's warm in there, which is really nice.
Yeah, that too.
Well, you've mentioned the noodle a couple of times, but what tools or props do you use in the pool when you're training clients? Like their pull dumbbells and kickboards. Do you use any of those, or are those all things just for water aerobics?
You can use them. if I have somebody that's looking to swim laps and just really get their swimming better, I really won't use dumbbells. Those are more like weights for in the pool, which you could use during aqua jogging or in an exercise class. Kickboard is a great tool. It just helps you focus on your legs. A lot of times adults don't know the proper way to kick because when you're a kid and you're learning how to swim, they don't really focus on those specific things that you have to do. You're just trying to get from point A to point B. So if you're looking to fine tune your swimming, that's one of the biggest things to do. And then if somebody's a runner, they're going to kick more from their quads and not really use the back of their legs, their hamstrings. So it's like a whole different movement. So a kickboard's great for that. Sometimes I'll put somebody in fins, but I don't like to have people rely on those to make them faster because you're not going to use those in a race or in your event.
Yeah, I was going to ask about those. And what about those like glove things that people wear? They're like, I don't know, like webbed, like
their hands.
They turn you into a waterman.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about just by that. Those are also good for like classes. They're not, you don't necessarily need them for swimming laps. When I was learning to swim, we were always taught like your fingers are glued together and you don't move them. And now we're finding that you want to separate your fingers a little bit more because in between your fingers, you do have a little bit of webbing, not like a frog does, but there's a little bit. So you don't have to be as tight with your hand. You can be a little bit more relaxed, which just creates a bigger surface area and you're able to pull more water that way, which is essentially what those gloves do. So by opening your hand a little bit, you can get rid of the gloves.
So which strokes do you primarily teach? Are there certain ones?
Mostly freestyle. Again, it's going to depend on the person. So I worked with somebody last year around this time who was doing a triathlon. So we primarily did freestyle, but we also incorporated some breaststroke so that when he needed to like look around because he was going to be in open water, he could do some breaststroke strokes with his head out of the water, see where he was at, make sure he was on course, put his head back down and switch back to freestyle. So we did like a transition from freestyle to breaststroke and then back to freestyle while he was swimming a length of the pool.
Is freestyle the same as American crawl?
Yes, front crawl.
Yeah, because I think that's what they called it, way back when I took lessons.
Yes.
But now it's called freestyle.
Just for a moment on that triathlon and switching things. I hear people sometimes say when they're doing a triathlon that they flip onto their back to sort of conserve their energy or whatever, and they're swimming. Is that like they do a backstroke?
You can. The way I look at it, though, is if you're doing a triathlon like in the summer and the sun is shining down, you don't want to be on your back. You don't want your face staring into the sunlight. So that's why I try to teach people that progression from freestyle to breaststroke. Breaststroke, you can swim it with your face out of the water for quite a while if you're doing it correctly and you have a strong enough kick behind you. So it would be the same idea, whereas you're just catching your breath a little bit. You're just kind of conserving some energy, making sure you're in the right place. And if you're on your back, you can't see if you're on like the right path and way over here, or if you're right by the kayaks.
Okay. Yeah. I just hear people say, oh, I flipped onto my back.
It's personal preference. You can do it that way. But again, I would think the sun would be in your face and
you're not really going to see where you're going.
Right.
Just to rest because they're exhausted.
That could be. Yeah.
Are there certain modifications for women over 50? I mean, is it different for different ages?
It's not necessarily different for ages. It's different based on ability. Like we discussed, if you're really scared of the water, but really want to have this goal of completing a 500 yard or meter swim in a pool, there's really no modifications other than that, just like leading into it with from the noodle to the holding onto the wall, just the progression like I talked about. The only other modifications would be if you have any injuries. So when I was in high school, I had some shoulder issues, and then I actually had some shoulder surgery 2 years ago. So I'm still working myself back into the pool and back to where I was before I had surgery. So my program looks a little bit different than somebody who's never had a shoulder injury or never had some sort of thing there. It's completely tailored to you and kind of what your needs are.
So it's not your age, but more things like what your shoulder mobility is, or what your leg, whatever what your whole body is capable of doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. If somebody has some knee issues, I wouldn't necessarily do a lot of breaststroke kicking unless you're doing it exactly right, because that stroke can strain your knees a little bit. And that's why I like to work with people and make sure that their technique is good so they're not further injuring themselves or creating brand new injuries that they've never even had before.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would be good. Yes.
So are there differences when you're training someone who is going to be competing compared to someone who's just swimming for enjoyment or somebody who's just trying to keep fit?
There are some differences. Somebody that's competing might do a little bit more speed work. It's a really good idea with anybody that I work with if they're just looking to get more fit in the water and just swim laps for 30 minutes. It's still a good idea to have like a 5 to 10 minute warm up, which is what I would do with somebody who's looking to do an event too. So I don't start one of my sessions with somebody and just say like, here, go do 4 lengths as fast as you can. Like you need to let your muscles warm up. And sometimes the pool is a little colder. So you want to make sure you have that warm up period. But then, like I said, so somebody that's trying to do a race or they're looking for a specific time, they might do some more timed efforts and get some rest. So one of my favorite sets is to do like 5 or 10 100s, which is 4 lengths each time. So if they're doing 5 times 4 lengths each time, they'll do their 4 lengths. We'll look at the clock. We'll see how long it takes. And then they get 30 to 40 to 60 seconds rest in between. And then they'll do another 4 lengths. And one thing I like to do is say, like, try to keep the best average between all of them. So if you're doing the first one in 1:30, the second one shouldn't be 2 minutes. So you want to try to stay within 5 to 10 seconds. So you pick a pace that's comfortable that you can do all 5 of them. If it's somebody that's just looking to swim 30 minutes and they just want to get in the pool and they want to have that mobility and they don't really care about their times, that's going to be more endurance based. So we'll do longer sets, but probably not as fast.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
If I decide, hey, I want to start doing competing and swimming, what are my options besides? So I know you can do triathlons that they have swimming, but are there competitions for adults who swim?
There are. There's the U.S. Masters program, like swimming masters. And I believe that starts at age like 26 or just right out of college. Anybody can join a master's program. I know that there's a couple of local ones in this area, and they're really laid back. They occasionally, like, they have practices. Like the one that I know that's close to here, they have a practice 2 or 3 times a week in the mornings, but then they leave their practice up on the whiteboard so anybody can come in and do it when it's convenient for their schedule. So if somebody can't make the scheduled practice time, they'll leave it up and that person's still getting that practice done. And then they do have meets a couple of times throughout the year where it might just be your whole team that's competing against each other. And it's like doing 2 lengths of every stroke, or you sign up for what events you want to do. With the master's program, you can make it more competitive. I believe they have like national meets that you can travel to and go to. I'm not a part of a specific master's program, just with injuries and my time and everything. But I have a group of friends that I was swimming with a lot before I had surgery. And I don't think any of them do masters either. So we just kind of have a group that we all swim together, and we found our little practice time and we meet up when we can. But there are masters clubs, I think, pretty much throughout the country.
I know we went through this when we were talking with someone about bicycling, that masters, whenever I would hear about these masters swimming classes, to me, it sounds like somebody who's really good at it, but it really has to do with age. That's for adults. Is that?
It's for adults.
It's masters just means like you're not a kid.
And it's funny. I've heard that like in the bicycle, the masters are 35 and older. There's not a standard master's age, I guess.
I don't think there is. Yeah. I think it's just based on sport. I believe swimming is 25, I think, or 26 or something.
Yeah. That's unusual. Yeah.
Well, maybe it makes sense for swimming because if you're like in college, you could compete in a college thing, but once you're out of college, how are you going to compete in swimming without an organization?
Right.
It's not like someone says, hey, let's do a 5K. So if I'm 25 years old, I could go sign up and run a 5K without having to do anything else but that.
Right.
You have to be organized.
To see us soliciting people at the pool. Hey, want to race?
Right.
I mean, that could go over great and it could maybe not go over well at all.
Yeah. If someone said that to me, I would look at them twice like, are you kidding me? No, I shouldn't say that.
Who was it? I think it's David Sedaris. You know David Sedaris, the author? Well, he's a humorist, but he said when he swims, I'm sure he said an old woman next to him doesn't know it, but they are racing. The person in the pool next to him does not know it, but he is racing. They are competing.
Yep.
Well, I was just thinking, if you're going to practice swimming, what's a typical practice schedule or calendar look like for a swimmer? Is it 2 days a week or, once a week or every day? How do you set up a calendar, and do you train with different strokes, like different times of the week? I don't know.
All of the above.
Oh, okay.
So just what you want to do and what you're looking to get out of it. If you want to make swimming your main focus for a while and you don't really want to do any running races and you don't want to do any biking races, you just want to focus on swimming, I would say probably swim 2 to 3 times a week and then weightlift 2 to 3 times a week. So if you're swimming 3 times, you'd want to weightlift twice. If you're going to weightlift 3 times a week, then swimming twice. But it's also what you have time for and what your pool availability is. It's not like everybody has the luxury to just go to the pool whenever they want to. It's a process. You have to go and get in the pool, but then you have to shower after, and it's a whole thing. So making sure you have that availability too. And if you can only fit it in once a week, then you would just make that practice maybe a little bit longer, since you know that was your only time in the pool, and then supplement it in the weight room or with walking or with biking. Some sort of cross training too is always ideal if you can't get in the pool as often as you'd like. So
cross training with swimming is very important as well.
It is. And swimming is a great cross training for running. So if you are training to run a marathon or a half marathon, if you wanted to get in the pool once a week or once every other week, just because it's so easy on your joints, it's a great cross training tool so that you can, still keep that endurance up and still get a really good cardio workout, but maybe not as hard as going for like an easy 3-mile run.
Got it.
Just something different.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I don't even really know what it means but you hear it all the time. And that is rotating when you're swimming freestyle. What does that mean? And why are we supposed to improve our rotation or not rotate? Could you just explain that to me?
Absolutely. I sure can. So freestyle, you are laying on your stomach, faces in the water, and then your arms are like crawling over the water. It's also called front crawl or the American crawl. You can't really stay flat and do that motion. So you have to have some natural rotation. If I am swimming and I'm staying flat, my arm is only going to go so far. When you rotate, you're getting a little bit more reach with your arm. So you're able to pull a little bit more water and you're not expending extra energy just by doing that little bit of shoulder and hip rotation.
So you're moving your torso just a bit.
Yes, you don't fully go onto your side, but you're like rolling a little bit to your side with one stroke, and then you roll to the other side with one stroke. One of my favorite things with the younger swimmers that I work with, like the kids, I'll say, you just took 30 strokes to get across the pool. Like you should probably be doing that like 22 to 24. So then we'll slow down and we'll count them. And I always say, so did the end of the pool move, or like, did that stay put? And they're like, no, it didn't move. Like can't move. And I was like, right. So isn't it easier to do 23 strokes instead of 30 strokes? Because the distance is the same. So if your stroke is more efficient and you're reaching a little bit more, you're actually taking less strokes, but you're just more efficient through the water.
That's something I never really thought about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a problem sometimes? Because I'm thinking of running, and like if I try to make my running stride longer, that's really not a good idea because I start heel striking and ends up injury kind of thing. But that's not a problem when you're swimming.
It's not necessarily a problem unless you're like overreaching. Really over. Okay. And that's where I had issues with my shoulder personally. My joints, I was just born, my joints were loose. So like the ligaments in my shoulder weren't really holding my shoulder joint in place anymore. And I had bad technique when I was younger that I never really fixed. I knew how to fix it. I just didn't because I thought I knew everything. When I was 12.
Happens to so many of us when we're young. We overdo something we shouldn't have. Yep.
Yeah. For me, I was overreaching and overextending. And since my joints are loose, that was where the problem laid in my shoulder. And it's funny, I actually was swimming at my gym a couple of years ago before surgery. And my swim coach from when I was younger, growing up, saw me and he's like, I bet your left shoulder hurts a lot. And I was like, Dan, why are you commenting on my swimming? He's like, does your left shoulder hurt? And I said, well, yeah, but why are you saying that? And he's like, because you're swimming all wrong. And I was like, well, you taught me. I mean, that's on you. And he's like, no, you didn't fix it. He said, I told you so many times, but you didn't fix it. And I was like, well, I guess you're right. So you're never too old to be coached by your coach and trainers.
And I guess no matter how good you are, even if you're a coach, there's always room for improvement, right? I guess
that's what I learned that day is that I
my goodness,
myself.
And he was right, unfortunately.
He was right. Yep. And I never argued with him again.
So when you're coaching folks, do you work more on endurance than on speed? And at what point do you change strategies to get faster?
Typically, I work on endurance first because a lot of times, kind of like you had mentioned, Jill, you did one length and you felt like you were dying. If you can only get one length at a time, then I'm not going to push you and say, well, do that length as fast as you can. I'd rather you get a bigger base so we can work up to 4 lengths at a time and then take a break. And then after you're pretty confident with several lengths, so I measure them based on hundreds, which is 4 lengths. The pool is either 25 meters or 25 yards. It depends on where you're at. So each 25 adds up to 100, and that means 4. So I'll do sets of hundreds a lot or 50s a lot. If you can comfortably do maybe 8 50s without a ton of rest in between, maybe 30, 40 seconds in between, your endurance is pretty good, but you don't want to jump up to 200s right away. You want to add in like 100s next. And then, once you're comfortable with doing some 100s, maybe add an extra 50 and do some 150s in there. But once you're more comfortable and you can easily do like 100 meters or 200 meters at a time, then you can start working with speed. It also just depends on your training cycle. If you're working with somebody right now and they have a race in July, you have to be a little creative with like, all right, let's really work on endurance for this first month. And then we start adding a little bit of speed, but we're still going to do endurance. It's just kind of a mixture of everything all at once.
What about form? Do you spend a lot of time working on form first before even endurance, or?
Yes and no. Again, that's pretty much my answer for everything. I've taught myself to really like pay attention to people's form. I think because I had so many shoulder injuries that I don't want that to happen to other people. If somebody's doing an endurance set and they're swimming a 100 and I notice something, I'll have them stop and say, hey, or I'll take a video on my phone and show them, because I think that that's a lot better so they can see what they're actually doing rather than trying to explain it. I'll say, hey, do you see how your arm is crossing over your body a little bit? If you keep doing that, that's going to lead to some shoulder pain, and we don't want that. So instead, do it this way where you bring your arm out a little bit. Try that for the next 2 lengths and we'll see how that goes. So it's kind of a mixture just based on what I see or what they're feeling.
And with speed, is there any tricks or anything like to get faster?
If your technique is right and you're efficient in the water, getting faster it's hard, but it's easier if your stroke looks correct.
Got it.
It's not as simple as just, spin your arms faster and kick your legs faster. That does work, but you have to make sure that technique doesn't go away. And that's the biggest thing. When people try to add speed, their technique just falls to the wayside. So I have a drill that I like to call distance per stroke, or DPS, which is what I was saying, like doing 23 strokes instead of 30. You're just reaching and you're going a little bit longer. Once you're comfortable with that, try speeding up a little bit, but keeping it right around that 23 stroke instead of, if you bump up to like 24, that's okay. But if you're back up to 28, you're trying to go faster, then obviously it's not efficient. So just kind of playing around with that is a really good way to start with incorporating speed a little bit.
So do people count when they're swimming? You count the number of strokes?
When we're doing that specific drill, yes. I usually count for them because my mind wanders when I swim, so I don't really expect them to count. They also make goggles now that have like a little like light up in one of the lenses and it'll count your stroke rate. Yeah, I think it's really distracting. One of my friends has them. He loves them. I think they're distracting, but I was also taught from age 8 to just count how many lengths you've done. And like, just in practice, that's what you did. But then Garmin watches, I think, count your stroke rate too. I've never actually worn my watch in the pool, again, because I just kind of swim for relaxation. But I believe that there's an app on most Garmin watches where you can set it.
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
Even my Fitbit, but my current Fitbit it only tells you after you've done swimming.
Okay.
I personally cannot remember how many lengths I've done.
Do you want to try for that?
Yeah.
So you know the lane lines that like have the circles on them? Push it all the way down, and after you've done 2 lengths, move one of them, and one little circle counts as a 50. So then
what? Wait a minute. Say this again on the rope.
You use
thing.
it like an abacus.
Yeah, like the lane lines that separate each lane, they have little circles that move. If you push it all the way away from the wall as far as it can go, if it's loose enough, hopefully that it is, then you just take one of the little circles and move it towards the wall after you've done 2 lengths, and each little circle is a 50. Or you can do it for 100.
Boy, doesn't that make sense?
Yeah.
There was one point in my life where I was taking a piece of paper and a pen and marking it, but it got all wet. I mean, it didn't work very well.
Yeah, try that next time with the lane lines. See if that helps.
Wow. Boy, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So let's say a woman is working on her swimming. She wants to compete in a triathlon, but most of her swimming is in a pool, but the race is going to be in open water. How does she go about making that transition?
One of the best things to do is find people that do open water swimming, even just to try it once. I did an open water race. I was a relay team for a triathlon, and I did the swimming, and I've never really done open water, and it was terrifying. And everybody I've worked with that's doing a triathlon, I tell them the same thing. Like, I did it once, I will never do it again, because I like to be in control in the water. That's where I feel the most comfortable. And I jumped in off the dock and had to start swimming, but somebody jumped like right on top of my legs. So I was not in control in the situation, and I felt like I was flailing, and I just had to get out of there. So taking away that fear is a really good way to do it in a controlled setting before the race. I did not do it correctly. I just jumped in for the race, and I was like, this will be fine. I'm a good swimmer. I actually swam the fastest I've ever swam because I was just trying to get out of the water. I remember my relay team was like, whoa, you're already back? And I was like, yeah, I'm done.
Don't ever ask me again.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was fun. So if you can go to like a local lake when it's warm, or if it's warm where you live, but you want to make sure that you're with a group of people. You never want to go alone unless there's like a lifeguard. You don't want to go alone because anything can happen. Any currents could be there, anything. And just practice, even if you don't go out very far, you get that feeling of being in open water because it's completely different than in the pool.
Yeah. I was going to ask, what motivational strategies do you have for people who fear the open water swimming? And I'm sure it's not to have somebody jump on your legs so you swim as fast as possible.
That is actually a problem with those races, is that they start swimming in this giant clump.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
There's people on top of you. Yeah, it is a clump.
Yeah,
or pulling. I mean, they're swimming over you or hitting your legs. And I mean, not necessarily intentionally, but
right.
It's very different than pool swimming, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's intense, but I think the more you expose yourself to that open water in a controlled setting with some friends, or, you can jump on Facebook and look for like local open water training groups and try to get in with them, and maybe only go a couple of times, but then you're going to meet some people that are more comfortable in the water too. And then you have that controlled setting. So if something does happen, you have somebody right there that's there to help you too. So like
right.
if somebody were to like jump on your legs, which they probably wouldn't, you would know what to expect. I think being over prepared in the water is really important. And I think that's why I didn't like that setting, because I wasn't prepared and I knew I could get out of it. I was fine, but it just wasn't for me. And I'm glad I had the experience, because now I can help people with triathlons, and I can learn from what I did and how I wasn't prepared. So you can be as prepared as possible.
So you don't go jump in the lake and show someone how to do the sighting, like how to figure out where they're swimming in the lake.
Nope, but I can teach you in the pool.
Okay.
One of the good things at the gym that I work at is we have lane lines, but then there's a big open area, like 3 lanes don't have lane lines. So I usually work with people that are doing an open water event over there because the lane lines actually block some of the waves from the other people. So if they're in that open area, they are getting some of those waves from the other people, and it simulates it a little bit more than if you're just in your own lane.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It seems like there is a lot of waves when you're in a competitive open water event.
Yes. And so then speaking about those waves is that I know when people are swimming triathlons, it becomes important to be able to breathe on both sides. And yet, when I was taught, I just breathe on my right side. And when I've tried to alternate, it's like an IQ test that I'm failing.
Me too.
Do you help people figure that one out? Are there any tricks you have on that one?
That's where you can do that breaststroke stroke and pull your face out of the water so you're looking straight up ahead. It is important to breathe to both sides if you can do it. But if it's going to be more stressful for you to breathe to your non-dominant side, then I wouldn't suggest doing it because then you're just going to panic and you might take on water and it's just not going to be good. So that's why you can lift your head up and you can still be swimming and making forward progress, but seeing where you're going. And then once you're comfortable and you know where you are, put your head down again and breathe to your one side. And then when you feel like you need to check again, just lift your head up and keep kicking either a flutter kick or a breaststroke kick. And then breaststroke arms they're almost like sculling where you just kind of go out and in.
Yeah.
See your positioning again and then just repeat that.
Okay.
And breathe to both sides. That's great too. But eventually you will have to look forward just to see where you're at to make sure that you're.
I was thinking about if you're in this giant clump of people swimming, if everyone's to your right, there's going to be a lot more waves and splashing. Yeah. So you might prefer to actually breathe to your left.
Yes.
But you'd have to practice that in advance.
Right. Or breathe to the front. When I jumped in and had the back of my legs jumped on, I had my head out of the water for, I don't even know how long. It seemed like forever until I got away from the people. And then I put my head down. Once I felt comfortable, I put my head down and I just started swimming.
Okay, that makes sense.
Again. Because that way you are maybe going to get some water if your head is forward, but you can control it a little bit better because you can see that person coming and oh, they're going to splash water right now. I can turn my head a little bit because it's out of the pool or out of the water.
Yeah.
I can be prepared for that.
Yeah, to me, it feels a lot more comfortable doing the breaststroke when I'm trying to see where I'm going. And I don't know, it's almost a rest in a way because not worried about the breathing rhythm. Of course, probably not making this forward motion that I need to do either. But
if you're still moving, you still are probably making that forward progress. You just don't want to stop. As long as your legs are moving a little bit and your arms are going, you're definitely making forward progress.
Okay.
So if that's what's more comfortable and you feel safer doing that, I would do that for sure.
When I do a lot of swimming, I end up being really hungry afterwards. But so as a swimming coach, do you encourage your clients to eat a certain way, or do you have any advice about eating?
So I'm not really a trained nutritionist or dietitian by any means. From my own personal experience, I'm also starving after I swim. We used to eat so much in high school, when we were training. But it's just pretty much the same advice as any exercise you're doing. So you definitely want to drink water and electrolytes. Like I mentioned before, you are sweating in the water, even if you don't realize it. So drinking a sports drink after or something that has electrolytes in it is going to help you replace some of those nutrients. And then just eating some carbs for energy and definitely protein to help rebuild the muscle. But you also need the fat too, because you're burning all of those things while you're swimming and you are using so many muscles of your body that you have to replace some of those calories.
Okay.
But the more efficient you become with your stroke, that hunger kind of goes away a little bit when your body's a little more efficient with your swimming, but you still can get really hungry after it.
Well, it kind of occurs to me, since we're talking about eating and swimming, how long are you supposed to wait after you eat? Now, I go back to when I learned to swim. I was so frustrated because my mom would always make me wait an hour after I ate before I could go in swimming. And maybe that's really old fashioned. Is that a thing or was that just something my mom made me do?
I think that's definitely, I don't know if it's like an old wives' tale, but we were always told that too growing up. But then,
Yeah.
like in high school before practice, we had snacks before we would get in the pool. So we'd like walk into the pool area. Everybody would grab a snack after school, and then we'd go change and get in the pool within 10 minutes. So I think if you're eating like a Thanksgiving size meal, you might not want to get in the pool right after.
Okay.
You're going to feel sluggish.
I think my mom was just sick of being the lifeguard out there at the lake and wanted a break. So we weren't allowed.
No, I don't think it was unique to your mother. I think every mother said it. Yeah, we all had to wait.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? I don't know. It's just that really sticks in my head. And, I'm thinking of all of this exercise. You need to fuel before you work out. So, I don't know.
It's definitely a timing thing. I mean, if you do eat a lot before you swim, you could get some cramping, or you could just like not feel great, feel a little bloated. It just depends on the person. Like I usually like to swim on more of an empty stomach, and then I'll eat my meal after the fact. But
yeah,
if you're like coming from work and you haven't eaten since lunchtime, grab some like trail mix or granola bar before you go in, something like light, but it's going to keep you sustained through it, and your water or your sports drink while you're swimming, and then have your meal after. It's probably a pretty safe way to go.
Thanks. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit. I know you do a lot of fundraising for St. Jude's Hospital, and I wanted to bring that up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So actually, one of my teammates in high school, he was a diver on our swim team. He had leukemia. I don't know the exact form. So I think it was my junior year. He was a patient at St. Jude. And at 17 years old, I didn't really understand all of the good that St. Jude does. I just thought, like, I remember hearing like, they don't have to pay for anything. They just went down there and all of his treatment is paid for. And I just remember like his main goal was to walk across the stage at graduation, his high school graduation. And like, I still get goosebumps thinking about it now. And I was like, it really hit me that I was like, wow, like, I'm thinking about where am I going to go to college? What am I going to do with my life? And that was just his goal to get to at that point and, hopefully make it further. But ultimately he ended up losing his battle with cancer. So just kind of all through college, I would support St. Jude, but I didn't really know what my money was going to. And then I kind of explored it in, I think it was 2010. I decided one day that I was going to run a half marathon, and I was like, oh, I wonder if there's one for St. Jude. And so I got on Google and I looked it up, and there was one, but it was the next weekend. And so obviously I was not going to be there. So I signed up for the 2011 St. Jude Memphis marathon weekend, and I did the half marathon, and I think I set a goal of like $500 that year. And I think I raised like $2,000 that year. And I have to date raised over $25,000 for the hospital and am considered a St. Jude Hero Ambassador. So I help local people in our state if they want to become a St. Jude Hero and fundraise for a race. They have races all across the country. Then I would reach out to them and help you like, hey, how's your fundraising going? Do you need any help with getting to that fundraising commitment level that you set for yourself? And I've met a lot of great people, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a great way to give back. And then actually the mother of that diver that was on my swim team, we've reconnected over the last couple of years, and she'll always reach out to me and just say like, I love what you're doing. I can't believe that so many years later, like you're still so passionate about St. Jude. And I absolutely love to see your posts every time you do it. So it's really cool to like hear from her. And cause that's kind of the full circle moment is they were the reason I found out about St. Jude to begin with. And now I can still share that with her.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great.
And so you've been doing this since 2011.
I have. I took a couple of years off of the race because I was coaching high school swimming, and December's prime time for high school swimming, which is when the race is. So this past December, I believe, was my 8th St. Jude half marathon. So this 2022 will be my 9th year.
Okay. And you say they have races across the country?
They do. So the rock and roll events, there's like Rock and Roll Nashville, Rock and Roll Vegas. Those are St. Jude sponsored events, and you can sign up as a St. Jude Hero, which is a fundraiser for St. Jude. I believe like the New York Marathon and the Chicago Marathon, pretty much any marathon or race you could be a St. Jude Hero for. it just maybe isn't as publicized.
Right.
But if we had any questions about that, I could definitely find out the answer. And like if your race would be a race that could fundraise for St. Jude.
Okay.
So if our listeners wanted to look at what you do for the hospital or reach out to you as a St. Jude potential hero, make a donation to your event, where can they go to support you?
The best thing to do is to follow me on Facebook. So each year I get a fundraising page and the link is always the same, but they leave it open for quite a while. So last year's fundraising page is actually open through like the middle of March. So if anybody were to donate right now, it would go to last year's total, which is fine because it all goes to the hospital anyway. But like for 2022, I'm probably I don't know if I'm going to raise 3,000 or 5,000 yet. I haven't decided on what my goal is, but I would prefer that the totals went to the upcoming year. But again, it really doesn't matter. It's just a little more work if they go to last year's total. So if they look me up on Facebook, my name on there is Amanda Boswell. And I believe my picture right now is me and an Elvis impersonator at one of the races. And it says St. Jude local ambassador. It's usually always a St. Jude picture on there.
Well, we'll attach the link into our show notes so that people can find you.
Perfect.
And if people want to find you online to look at your coaching services or your swimming info, where should they go? Probably
the gym that I work at is the best way, but also through Facebook is fine. The way we set up personal training at our gym is like somebody could go to the front desk or they would call or send an email to the gym and say, like, I want to work with Amanda. And then the gym reaches out to me. But if somebody wants to work with me directly and they already know that, getting in touch with me directly, then I can walk them through the process of signing up for personal training at the gym. It just kind of eliminates that middleman. So again, they could message me on Facebook, or the gym is Life Center Plus in Hudson, Ohio, that we can definitely put the link on there too.
Okay.
So either way, it's fine.
Great.
So if they also just have because we have listeners all over the world. So if someone just has a question about how to do something, they could find you on Facebook and send a message that way.
Absolutely. Just send me a Facebook messenger message and I will get to it for sure.
Okay. You're not set up yet to do online coaching services, I gather.
I'm not. I'm actually going through like a personal restructuring of my loves and passions and life right now. So it might be coming in the future. It's something I've thought about doing. I actually want to kind of dive into more, like with my master's being in sports psychology, more like a mental performance training, which could go along with swimming. So I don't know what's to come, but I think something might be in my future that way.
Okay, great.
Interesting. Well, you've been a wonderful guest today, and we really enjoyed you sharing all your hints and tips and tricks and technique, all that. It's just been great. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I really like the tip about counting my laughs.
Yeah, I think we're all going to use that.
Yeah, I saw somebody do it like years ago, and I was like, why did I never think of that? It's genius.
It's wonderful. Well, thanks again. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, ladies. Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Amanda sure has lots of great advice for us about swimming. I really like what she had to say about breathing and the different strokes, working through some of the, using the 100s, the 50s when you're swimming in a pool for counting your laps.
Oh, yeah. The whole thing about using the beads on the lines was a great tip.
That was an eye-opener, wasn't it?
Yes. So she really did make me realize that I could become a better swimmer and that there are some good reasons to swim. If nothing else, I might try the aqua jogging occasionally. Right now, I am a very lazy swimmer. I swim a length, I stop, I swim back, I stop for even longer. I could actually work on getting better at it.
Yeah, I did a lot of swimming when I was in high school because I was a lifeguard. And when we would be training, it wasn't about breathing. It was about keeping your head out of the water so you could keep somebody's head in your eyesight. So my strokes are a mess as far as breathing and trying to really, race. So
oh, yeah.
I think that I could really have an advantage by having a coach help me. And also about the webbed fingers. I always thought you had to keep your fingers very tight together. And that was interesting to me as well.
So that's another thing where things change. What was once true is no longer.
Yeah, things change.
It also was good to know that you could maybe look for those master swim classes, because she's right. I don't want to go join the Red Cross swimming group with 5-year-olds.
Oh, no. I don't think that. Well, I think what she said was, to talk with the swimming instructor to see if they had anybody. So a couple other things I thought was funny was, you don't have to wait an hour after you eat. And I did think that was kind of an old wives' tale or that my mom was just making that up. So.
No, your mother did not make that up. That was like a universal mother thing.
Yes, I guess so. And the other thing that has stuck with me that isn't really swimming related, but was at the very end of the podcast when she said she's thinking about mental performance and how you think about your performance in your activity. And it got me thinking about a podcast that we recorded a couple years ago with a woman from Cleveland. Her name was Jen, and it started with a B.
Barovica. Jen Barovica. She's a triathlon coach.
Exactly.
I had the same. I couldn't remember actually who it was at the time, but
yeah, no, I looked it up. And I think that if and when Amanda makes her change, we're going to have her back on the podcast to talk about that.
That's a really interesting topic because it applies to everything, but
to everything.
It's like me saying I swim, but I swim like I have nothing else to do. Like, like I'm in the water. I don't swim like I'm actually achieving anything. I don't
swim. I play.
Yeah. So, but if I'm going to spend an hour or a half hour or whatever in the pool, I might as well actually try to achieve something.
Right. Well, the training, that's really quite interesting, and improving cardio in a different way that's easy on the joints. That's very, very appealing to me. So, and I'm sure a lot of women over 50 feel the same way. If you have any kind of arthritis going on, running can be difficult, sometimes biking as well.
It's good also just for cross training. I mean, one of the things that I realize is that with running or bicycling, the days of, I think personally, of doing it every day or 5 days a week or whatever are long gone. And that it's much better to, like, if I want to run 3 days a week and find other things to do. So a day of swimming would actually be a good workout without stressing my joints in the same way that running does.
Yeah. And I would say I'd flip that, 5 days of swimming and maybe 1 running for me.
Right. Okay. Well,
just the whole, the joints as we age, your joints definitely change. I see that quite a bit as I'm no longer 50,
Right.
So I'm sure we have other swimmers that are listening today.
If you're listening and you are a swimmer, or you're just thinking about becoming a swimmer, or you absolutely hate swimming, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, leave a message for us at the website, becomingellie.com, or any of our social media sites. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
Oh, I forgot about LinkedIn.
Yeah, I've been making sure that we post on LinkedIn as well, because some people like to follow people on LinkedIn on the notifications. And we have a company page, even though I don't know that we're considered a company per se. But, if that's where you are on your social media, please take a look at LinkedIn.
Well, I'm going to have to go and look at that because I am certainly on LinkedIn.
Well, I find, I find that I log into LinkedIn a lot more often than some of the others, and so it's wherever you are in your social media.
Yes, we would love to hear from you at any of those places. And this is a quick aside. If there's some social media place that you think like everyone is going to,
right, and we're not there,
then that we aren't covering, let us know, because things change rapidly.
Yeah, we'll try to learn it.
Yes. So
I shouldn't laugh so hard.
But as long as we're talking about social media, if you're on Facebook, please join our private Becoming Ellie Facebook group, because we would love to have you join us there.
Right. That's probably our main place where we have discussions, and it's private, so it's not open to the whole world. And I feel a little more comfortable just discussing challenges there. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a friend, because that really helps to build our Becoming LA community. And, we all support each other, and that's where we get encouragement, inspiration, motivation, that type of thing.
Great. That would be wonderful. Chris, it's been really good talking with you today, and I will see you on the next episode of Fit Strong Women Over 50.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.